If there's no chaos in your business, that's a bad thing. That means that you don't have opportunity coming at you. We should all feel a little bit of chaos. If everyone listening can internalize that as opportunity, this is the time where you can make some big moves. Every company should have an instruction manual. The owner or the early team designs this business and they build an awesome customer reputation. And then a lot of times they just get stuck at some ceiling where they can only manage and control what they can see themselves. Where businesses really start to break through is when you've got that next level of management and people that are empowered to run their own teams. You can do it without your business breaking. Bad performance is either the wrong person or the wrong training.
Welcome to Powered by Instinct. If you're interested in getting more done more naturally, then let's jump in.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Powered by Instinct. I'm excited to be back with you and excited to have a great guest here today. Chris Ronzio is the CEO of Trainual. I've gotten to know him a bit. We both live in Phoenix. Chris, we really should have probably gotten together and done this over a beer and a table, person to person, since we're not far apart. But anyway, thanks for being here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how many miles away are we on this call? We could have just done this in person.
All right. Well, we'll do it again if it's good.
Next time.
Then next time, yeah, it'll be in person. Actually, one of the things that attracted me to you right away is you're a Suns fan, Phoenix Suns for basketball. So we could do it at a Suns game because the season will be starting before too long.
Let's do that. Yeah, that sounds great.
Although I don't know, audio might be a problem if we did a podcast at the Suns game.
We'll have to do it before the game on the court. We could get the VIP treatment, and I know we were talking about getting all the players to take Kolbe tests too. So maybe that's our way in. We'll schedule a podcast there.
I love that. So how did you become a Suns fan? Because you're not from Phoenix.
No, I grew up in Boston and Chicago. And so my first exposure to the Suns was the Bulls beating the Suns in the 93 finals. So I know that was painful for anyone in Arizona. I was fortunately on the other side. But I always thought that the Suns and, that whole era, Charles Barkley, Kevin Johnson, were cool. I remember doing book reports on Arizona. I picked Arizona as the state for my book reports because I thought, they've got roadrunners and cacti, and it felt like another world. And so when I finished college on the East Coast, my wife and I wanted to live somewhere warm. Neither of us had ever been here. We didn't know anyone here. We came here for a weekend just on vacation, and we said, yeah, that's the place. And so we moved here thinking it'd be for 2 years, and 16 years later, we're still here.
What kept you here?
It was really just the community, the weather, I don't know, for anyone that is from a bigger city, maybe you feel like such a tiny fish in a huge pond. And when we came out here, starting a business, getting in the entrepreneurship community, it felt like everyone was in this innovation, enterprising kind of mindset. Everyone wanted to help each other. It was up and coming. And so we just plugged right in. And then I guess to close the loop on the basketball question, when we had kids, my first son was 4 years old when we had our second son. And I was looking for something fun to do with him, just dad son time. And so we bought a little package of games, and that turned into season tickets. And now we've been just rabid Suns fans for the last 10 years.
I moved to Phoenix when I was 6. And that was one of the first things that I got connected to was being a Suns fan. And the first time the Suns went to the championships against the Celtics, so I don't think we're born yet because it was 76, but yeah, we lost that one too. They were both painful. So you've got connections to 2 of the 3 painful championship losses for the Suns. But all right, but
now I'm on the good guys side. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're on the good guys side. I appreciate that. So another thing that's interesting to me, you're just an entrepreneur by nature. It seems like and listening to you talk about Phoenix, that's one of the things that I've experienced, but I grew up here. So I kind of didn't realize how kind of open and welcoming we are to various people, I think, including entrepreneurs. But I kind of did the opposite. I moved back east for a while and really loved being in Philadelphia and DC when I was there. But it is a different environment. I don't know if it's that it's bigger because, they're roughly the same size as Phoenix, but kind of that old East Coast, who are you, who's your family kind of mindset versus in Phoenix, just get to know you. I don't know, but it was different for me. But the entrepreneur thing, you started when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Why? What drove you to start businesses?
Well, as a little kid, I had an example in my house. My dad was a business guy, not an entrepreneur, but a business guy. And so he would wear a tie and carry a briefcase. And I think I always wanted to be a business guy when I grew up. And so as a little kid, I remember walking around Toys R Us and seeing action figures, Ninja Turtle action figures. And my mom would say, no, no, wait till your birthday. And so I thought, well, how can I make $4 or $5 to go buy my own action figure? And that's when it started for me, was as a little kid. And it was just washing my neighbors' cars or doing little odd jobs and making enough money to buy action figures. And so before long, I had this whole wagon full of Ninja Turtles that I had bought myself, and I was so proud of it. And so as I got older, the businesses just got a little more sophisticated. And it was like, how do I make $100? Or how do I make $1,000? Or how do I employ my friends? And so, yeah, I always had jobs, businesses, like 16 business cards before high school, I think.
What do you consider your first actual business as opposed to just a way to earn a couple of bucks?
My first real business was a video production company that I started when I was 14. And it started off really humble beginnings of just like recording my friend's grandpa's birthday or anniversary or cousin's wedding or whatever. And then we started doing sports games at school. And the sports games led to championships, which led to tournaments, which led to events around New England and up and down the East Coast. And so I ended up running that business through high school, through college, after college for 12 years. And sold the business. And so that's what I was doing when I moved out to Arizona, but started when I was 14.
Was it easy to sell it or was it hard? Because I know a lot of founders, they go different directions. Some are like, I was so happy. Some are, oh, it was painful. It was like I gave birth to this thing.
It was a mix. I had so much of my identity wrapped up in that business. My aunts and uncles knew me as like the video guy, like they would ask me to fix their VCR at Thanksgiving and things like that. That was my identity. But at the same time, I was ready for something new. I had been in these entrepreneurship, mastermind kind of groups, and I saw that the problems people had in other businesses were the same problems I had in my business, and I was more excited to help them with their companies. And so a year before I sold my business, I had promoted my director of operations to president. He was running the day-to-day, and to fill my calendar, I started consulting for other companies, and I was just having so much fun digging into, how to run an electrical contracting business or how to run a retail store or a doctor's office. These were like new worlds to me. And so when I decided I wanted to sell, it was really just, let me go out to my competitors who I'm always bidding against, and let me go to my biggest customers and see what I can get for this thing so I can move on.
Was putting the president in what was promoting the director of operations to president a plan, or was like, did you know you were going to want to sell and you were positioning that, or did it just work out that way?
No, I thought I want to be an owner first. So I thought if I put someone in place and I'm not doing any of the day to day, I can treat this like I'm an investor. We can have quarterly board meetings or strategy calls or whatever. And I wanted that first. And I thought if that works, I'll do that forever. But I was so distracted with the new stuff that I was doing that I wasn't giving this business any time or any attention. And then the investments they wanted to make felt like it was borrowing from more exciting places to put the money. And so it made more sense to cut ties.
What were some of the things you mentioned that you really liked seeing, the challenges that other people had and the problems? What were some of the interesting ones to you?
Well, what I saw is I was obsessed with operations and process in the video company. So we started doing live sporting events, youth sporting events around the country. And it was so meticulous, our process. How could we consistently look the same, feel the same, act the same at any venue in all 50 states in America? And so we had this training program for all of our camera operators and editors and our sales representatives. Everyone was wearing the same uniform. They had lanyards. We had boxes of the same gear that was very standardized and numbered, and we'd ship them out with laminated checklists. And that was like what I poured my passion into for years. And so then when I'd go to another business and see how all over the place what they were doing was, it was like, if they had 2 job sites, one would be where the owner was, and the other job site was like a crapshoot of just, like they're lucky if like people, if they build the customer correctly. And so what was exciting to me was helping people scale from kind of 1 to 2 or 1 to 5. It was like, you're doing a job when the owner's involved. How do you delegate effectively? How do you build a team and do the job where the owner's no longer involved? That's what got me excited.
You were still really young. Was it hard to get people to take you seriously when you went in as a consultant now rather than a service provider?
No, I mean, growing up, people always commented on me being young. And as I started to get gray hair, I was like thinking, I'm losing that. No one's going to say I'm young anymore. I think the being young was kind of an asset because I was plugged into the new ways to do things, the new technology. And so they saw this young kid who did have reputable business success. I was in communities that,
Right.
that put a stamp on you for certain revenue levels or whatever. So that success was there, that resume was there. But then it was really can I make an impact? In my first week or my first few days working with them, do I bring good ideas? Do I change anything? Do people take me seriously? And that was a foundation that a lot of what I do today started from, was being able to get up to speed on businesses I was consulting for.
All the processes and stuff that you were obsessed about and poured yourself into. We haven't really described to the audience what Trainual does, but since I know it, I see a pretty clear through line from that into what you do. Was it clear to you that that was a direction you were going to go? And did you have a plan for where you are now? And then we'll kind of back into telling people what you're doing now. But I'm more curious right now in the kind of how you got there, and was it planned out?
It was not. Looking back, it seems clear. At the time, it was not. So as I was doing this operations consulting work, I knew that what was valuable about my video company was the IP we had built. We had a custom software in the video company that managed how we did what we did. And we had our playbook for how we ran the video company and how everything was standardized. And so when I was transitioning out of that business, that's what was valuable. And so as I started consulting, I thought, how do I make my consulting business valuable? Well, we need to have a standardized way to do things, and we should probably have some kind of tech. And so Trainual started as just the tech for my consulting firm. And what was funny is my growth plan, my business plan for the consulting firm was hire consultants in all the metro cities in America, like I had hired videographers, and get them to do operations consulting work with our model, with our back office for businesses in their city. And so I started training those consultants using Trainual, the software. And that's where kind of the light bulbs started to hit of maybe this is the scalable thing. And maybe this can help people. And, instead of them cutting a $20,000 check, they can pay a $99 a month software. So I saw it as a way to help more businesses.
When did that transition take place? Was that pretty quick when you realized, oh no, got to shift the model totally, or did that take a while?
Oh, it took a while. It was 4 years into my consulting, and it was in the end of the 4th year that I hired a developer. And my thought was, I'm going to have this developer build custom tools for my consulting clients. That'll be another product we offer. And in his first 3 months, I said, well, why don't we it's a low risk thing. Why don't we rebuild Trainual, this little internal tool we have? And as I was working with him on Trainual, I thought, oh, this is getting good. Like, I really like this tool. What if we add this little feature and we add this? And so it was by the end of that 3 months that I decided, instead of taking on a new batch of clients personally, I was going to end all my client relationships, my personal consulting, and just go all in on Trainual for 6 months and see if I could make it work. And so that was back in January 2018.
Was it literally an internal brand at that point? Like you called it Trainual internally before it was something offered outside?
Yeah, you couldn't really buy it from the outside. It was just like
Right.
I would give it for free to my clients that I worked with. And then after 6 months, they'd have to start paying the monthly fee. And so over a few years, it built up to where it was paying my mortgage and my car payment. And my wife was like, you should do something with this. This thing seems legit. So, but there was no master plan. My big plan was, maybe best case scenario, I can cover the salaries of my consulting back office employees. And then we get to just pick where to spend our time. So I didn't think it'd turn into what it has.
What has it turned into? I mean, tell people the problems that it solves and the good things that it does.
Yeah, sure. So Trainual today, Trainual training manual, it is a product that houses all of your company's knowledge and information to get your new people up to speed and keep your existing people up to date. And so everybody wants people to be up and running quickly when they hire them. They want them running by the same kind of standards, the same behaviors, fitting into the same culture, and being able to be as productive and empowered as possible. And so what our tool does is it houses all of your information from your company, your stories, your history, your milestones, your ideal customers, your packages and pricing and products and services. And then it goes through your policies of like the rules in the company, and then your processes, your SOPs for how to do everything for every responsibility in the business. And so again, it's like getting new people up to speed, keeping existing people up to date as things change management. That's what our tool does. And so people, they log in on the website or on their phones, and they have access to all of the brains in the company.
Is it still a passion? Like you described before, you had the passion for the processes with the video company when, just starting out. Which part of this is the passion for you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The product is what I stay up until 2 a.m. sketching out new features for and thinking about. Every company should have an instruction manual. Every business has a way that it's supposed to work. And maybe the owner or the early team designs this business and they build an awesome customer reputation and they create a repeatable service or a product that can scale. And then a lot of times they just get stuck at some ceiling where they can only manage and control what they can see themselves. And where businesses really start to break through is when you've got that next level of management and people that are empowered to run their own teams. And you can do it without your business breaking. You want things to still be consistent. You want your customers to still have a great experience. And all of that hinges on your ability to define what good looks like. And so inside the company, you need to spend some time saying, here's what a perfectly delivered service looks like. Here's what our ideal customer is. Here's what our ideal employee looks like based on their values and their behaviors. And our product is enabling people to do that. And so I am 100% just pouring myself into this because I want every company to have a playbook. If you go back, a few decades, making a business plan was common practice because it was hard to start a business. Right? Like you had to put a lot of capital into it. And so people would work hard to make a business plan. Now you just kind of start a business accidentally because it's $11 to register a domain name, and you fall into business. And so what we're doing is almost like retroactive business planning to say like, how is my company actually going to succeed? And I think a few decades from now, every single company will have a playbook, will have an operations manual. It'll be malpractice to run a business without one. And your employees will demand it because they want to know what good looks like.
I don't know that it'll be every business even decades from now, but what I've seen is there's a natural weeding out process. The companies that don't get that process driven outlook and something like Trainual, obviously there are other ways to do it, but if they don't have that, they're just not going to be around very long. There's too much competition. People will do it more effectively. Unless it's just they kind of aren't interested in growing and they're just going to be kind of themselves and one or two other people. But that's not many businesses anymore.
What do you see as the biggest ceiling or barrier for people? Because you guys work with so many businesses. So where do you think companies get stuck operationally?
I think one of the big things you talked about is bringing in new people and handing off responsibility. And it breaks down for a few reasons. I asked you before about, was it hard for you as the founder to step back? I think that's one issue is a lot of founders, and not just founders, but a lot of people in leadership positions have a hard time delegating to somebody else and bringing somebody in and letting them fail sometimes and learn the hard lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And then, operationally, another part of it is, you talked about how important it was for your business to make sure you were delivering quality stuff every time, no matter where in the country. And that's a hard thing to do when you grow. And so operationally, people lose that ability to control stuff and they don't put something in place. They can control it when it's really small, but you get bigger and you don't control it. So whether it's operations and people, leading people, but so much of leading is setting them up for success. I talked about being drawn to you because you were a Suns fan. Professionally, I was drawn to Trainual because there's a great fit. I mean, you guys talk about a playbook and a manual and giving people ways to institutionalize what they're doing. And I think that's what Kolbe does too. We give people a way to understand themselves and the people that they're working with so that things can be easier. You're not constantly mystified about, oh, well, why does David operate the way he's operating? Like, you know what? We can tell you some things are predictable. I think both of those things, we focus on the people side, not the process side. But even with that, we help people understand who is more process driven, who should probably be the leader of the effort to bring Trainual into a company, for example, just in terms of how they operate. But
oh, I love that. We got to talk more about that separately too. That's a great idea. Yeah, the people side is so important. We should spend some time there. I got to tell you this one story you made me think of. So on the process component, on the process side, I remember being at this event in New York City. We were at Chelsea Piers, these ice skating rinks there for this big championship, East Coast Championships. And our camera operator is filming one of the performances. And during the performance, the battery dies. And so they miss the performance. And I remember standing at our sales table and the mom coming up wanting that performance and us having to tell her that the camera died and we didn't have it. And her daughter's crying and she's yelling at us. And when something like that happens in the business, people have things that go wrong in the business all the time. You got to think like, how does this never happen again? What policy or process am I going to fix so this never happens again?
Right.
I think the good businesses fix those things as soon as they happen once. And the businesses that struggle and don't scale contract to try to limit those problems from ever happening. Instead of saying, well, we'll expand our fleet of cameras and camera operators and whatever, they might say, oh, I have to be on the camera every time. I would never make that mistake.
Right.
Whereas a good business would say, well, how do we get batteries that back up instantly to cables that we run around the venue, So I think that there's operational things businesses have to break through. Anyway, we should go back to the people side because that's super interesting.
Well, and that's the training part too. I mean, you were talking about the processes and procedures, but if people don't know what they are, they're not going to do them. And that's why some people, I think, have a really difficult time handing things over to other people. It's two things. One, did you make it easy for them? Or did you just throw them a box of stuff and say, hey, here are the batteries and the cameras, go do everything? Well, they're going to mess up. You just set them up for failure. But when you make it repeatable and then train them, here's the box. So it's all labeled and it's all in great shape, but they still need to learn how to use it and, be taught to anticipate some of the problems because that's just not natural. So that's another part that I love about Trainual is it's easy to set that up so that it is repeatable. You don't lose that knowledge because that's another thing that I think is really hard for a lot of earlier stage businesses is they learn the lesson. I mean, if it's one person remembering it, that's fine. And again, that gets to this small, retrenching when there's an additional problem. But if you learn it and then can re-access it when you need to be reminded of it or be reminded of the solution, hey, I learned the lesson, here's the solution, but can somebody else find it? Trainual makes that so much easier because it's, hey, let's capture this, let's put it in place. Let's put it not just, don't breadcrumb, you can find it if you do this link, this link, this link, but here's an actual program where that stuff comes in.
Is it your memory as one person or is it a collective memory for the whole business? Does everybody need to make this mistake or does one person making the mistake affect your process or your SOP that everyone learns from? One of the things I've said before, I'm curious if you agree with this, is bad performance is either the wrong person or the wrong training. Maybe you have a more articulate way to say this, but I think if you find the right person and they're failing, it's because you didn't set the right expectations or coach them or teach them correctly.
Yeah.
And if you feel like the training's great, then maybe you just didn't find the right person that's, fit for the role.
I totally agree. I mean, at least 90% of the problems are those two things.
Yeah.
Sometimes tricky to figure out which one it is. I think what I would add to it is that really is for kind of performance in known situations. there's a different part of running a business that's, oh, there are new things affecting us and we haven't learned the lessons yet. There is no process yet because things are changing, or, we're moving into a new market and we have to start learning those lessons again because they're new lessons. And that's a little bit trickier. And that's, I think, where the leaders really do have to step up and figure out. But it's also understanding when you're working with people, if something went wrong, is it a situation where it really should have been more smooth? Because, hey, we've done this before. It really is supposed to be in our wheelhouse. Or is this something that we're experimenting on? We're trying it out. We're moving in a new direction. I get frustrated when people don't understand those differences.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to be a bit more demanding in those situations where it's, hey, we've done this a bunch of times. We think we've learned the lessons. And we identify, it's not like something different happened this time. It's just that either it's the wrong person again, or maybe the wrong training. But if you've done the training and you've got a bunch of people who've done it, yeah, you can be demanding. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm not talking about being a jerk when you're demanding.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to make a mistake now and then. But that's different than a time when you throw somebody into a situation where you shouldn't really expect them to anticipate everything because it's new. You're trying different stuff out.
Totally. I think as leaders or managers, you have to have more grace for people when they're thrown into unknown territory. So yeah, it's hard to say something is bad performance when you have no expected outcome. You have to say, like, let's try it. And businesses always need to carve out a little bandwidth for just trying stuff that they don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah. So we should tell our audience, because most of our audience is very well steeped in Kolbe, you are a 2594. So you are an initiating quick start, almost classic entrepreneur in that sense. Just go for it, try stuff out, experiment, see what happens, learn from it, move on. I'm actually maybe personally more interested in your experience as a 2 in Fact Finder. So I'm at the other end of the spectrum in Fact Finder. I'm an 8. I'm all about details, information, doing research, what's happened before. You're a much more bottom line, simplify, hey, just give me a little bit and I'm going to go. What was that experience like for you as a kind of more bottom line, I don't need all the facts and figures kind of person starting and running a business?
I think there's some good things and some bad things. On the bad side, I might do a Google search and see the first result and start running with it because I'm such a high quick start. I'm like, great, I found it. Let's set it up. And then I hit a problem like down the line that's unexpected. But on the good side, I think I'm able to distill things really quickly. And, so as a consultant, first of all, I feel like I was able to get the gist of the problem very fast. I would go into a new business, I'd talk to a few people, and it's like, boom, I've got it. I know exactly what to do. And so then before the client or the owner even had a chance to analyze what I was doing, everybody else is like, oh, did you see what Chris did? It's awesome. And so like I got that really fast payoff and ROI. As a CEO, I think it's something that I've had to temper down just a little bit because I have a lot of people around me that need more information, that are much higher fact finders. And so they know to communicate the simple headline to me, but when I'm trying to influence them, I need to slow down sometimes and give them more information. And so it's been something that I think learned, but it has pros and cons.
How do you slow yourself down to give them more information without taking yourself out of your strengths?
Part of it is surrounding myself with the right other people. So when I have a big idea, I'll go to a few people that are the high fact finders and I'll whiteboard something out and I'll answer all their questions and give them all the detail. And then when I communicate something to the group, I have a few kind of allies in the room that can fill in the gaps of what I said and make flush out the full idea, and everybody else starts nodding.
I've worked with so many entrepreneurs who are similar to URMO, 9 in quick start, and then especially if there's like the 2 in Fact Finder who describe pain for themselves and oftentimes pain for their organization, where they have lunch with somebody, where they've spent the weekend and they come back Monday morning and have 17 ideas and people take them as marching orders. But it wasn't a marching order. It was just, oh, I had this great brainstorm. But to you, it's just an idea and you didn't necessarily mean run with it. Have you had experiences like that?
Oh, yeah. So the way that I feel like solved this, for the most part, is I have an incredible assistant, and we have this system where every time I have an idea, I send it through to her in chat as just a bullet point. And so the bullet point indicates that this is just some idea. It could be a crazy idea, it could be a task, it could be something I want to talk more about. And then in our daily stand-up, she will bring all these bullet points back to me and say, tell me more about this. And she asks and flushes out the questions. And if it's a task, she puts it on my to-do list. If it's message for someone else, she can communicate it on my behalf. And so having those filters in between me and the rest of the team helps distill this down instead of it just being the raw thing that everyone's getting hit with and thinks it's a marching order. Because you're totally right. I remember past times when I would forward an email to someone and it would be like a cold email from someone I've never heard about. And I'd forward the email like, hey, this may be interesting for our marketing leader. And then because I forwarded the email, they go on 7 calls with this person and they sign up for this tool. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, well, you
You
wanted
said it to me,
yeah.
boss.
And so you definitely have to reel that back and realize that people want to do a good job. They want to impress. And if they're getting something from the CEO, they may take it as gospel unless you qualify it and say, this is just an FYI, don't act on this. And I've had to do that.
I stopped myself, but I won't. I was going to say you seem pretty humble, but I can't ask you about that because then it would totally, it's like a paradox. How can you tell me about how humble you are? So I'll just say it. You have the self-awareness also to understand, hey, your role as CEO, people are just going to run with things, even though that isn't necessarily what you mean. But I've also seen some not so humble initiating quick start CEOs who really do think that all of their ideas should be followed up on. I had an idea, so it must be brilliant. This is where, from a Kolbe perspective, it's not just one part of the mind. It's not just conation. You also have to have the humility, affectively, and the cognitive intelligence to realize, yeah, that idea was interesting, but no, it's not smart to pursue it for whatever reason. Either it's not a good idea or it's a really good idea, but it doesn't fit with our business plan or our model, or I don't know. It sounds like you've been able to avoid some of those problems other people have.
There's a couple phrases I've used, which are, I'm very open to being wrong, and I share my idea, or this is just a crazy idea. And those little qualifiers, again, I think tell people that, okay, this is not something I have to move on. And, if I do have an idea that persists, that I'm thinking about for weeks or months, or if I bring it up to one of my leaders over and over and over again, then they start to say, okay, this is something he cares about. Let's talk more about this. But I think it's important for leaders to set that stage and say, look, I don't want you to do everything I say. This is not a dictatorship. I'm giving you some raw material, but you're in charge. This is your part of the business. You get to decide what to do with it.
So what are some things that moving forward you're interested in or think are going to be really important, whether that's for Trainual or just kind of more macro in the business space?
Well, one thing we're talking a ton about, of course, is AI. And so we already have a lot of this in our software, but I'm thinking a few years out, like, what if everybody has AI agents for every role in their company and robots that do the physical tasks? Like, how does that supplement a person in a business? And how does our product help facilitate that? And so it's pretty interesting to have a product where you're managing your company's best practices. And now if you just think about a world in which you've got people and you've got AI agents and you've got humanoid robots, like, how do you manage all of their best practices? Where is the central brain that you're configuring who does what, and you're, dividing and conquering different tasks and responsibilities in the business? And so, that's we're thinking about that a ton, but that's really just an extension of how we work today.
Where do you think that'll go? I mean, and maybe more macro now. I mean, what are the implications? I mean, one of the things I think of is, if a lot of what you do is help on the people side, are we just going to remove people totally, or to what extent, and where maybe will people still be more heavily involved in running a business?
I think people will never be removed. I think it's this whole change in the world is very similar to introducing computers 50 years ago, or introducing the industrial revolution 100 or 120 years ago, or whatever that was. And at any of those times, you'd see headlines that say, like, there will be no jobs anymore, no one will ever work. And I think the reality is it just shifts where the population has to spend their energy. And so what Kolbe does, I think, is going to increase in importance, because it is going to heighten the importance of relationship and communication, because that is what we as people want. We still want relationships with other people. You don't necessarily want to interact with robots all day. You want to talk to somebody that, the barista that compliments your haircut. Like there is an interpersonal relationship to how we move through the world. And so I think that's going to stay. All right. So big picture, things I think that'll change. I think education is going to change a ton. I think it will be compressed because people can learn a lot faster. They can learn the basics, the fundamentals a lot faster. And so I think the role of schools will have to change to be more about preparing you for the world, and more about how you interact with peers, how you work in a group project, how you emerge as a leader. Those are things that schools aren't designed to teach today. They're things that you kind of get passively from being in the education system, right?
So yeah, let me jump in. I don't know if you know, but Kolbe Corp actually got its start in the education space. Did you?
I don't know if I know that. No.
The name of the company originally was Resources for the Gifted. So it was about first being a source for finding other people's games, books, not textbooks really, but materials that were used in schools focused on gifted education. And then, so my mom started the business almost 50 years ago, but then she realized, well, there's not really a lot in that space. So she started creating her own and hiring people to create materials. But the reason I thought of it was all about critical and creative thinking skills. It wasn't about memorizing stuff. That's why I say it was not textbooks. It wasn't like, oh, here's history, know these dates and these people. It was helping kids learn how to be critical in the sense of bring in information, weed through it, figure out what's nonsense, what's not, how does it fit together. But then also on the creative side, okay, well, that's kind of the input, but then how do you do better with the output, the creation? And that can be creative like a piece of art, but what we do in business is very creative too. Setting up processes. I mean, it maybe isn't as sexy as writing a song, but it's still creating something from nothing. And I totally agree with you. A phrase that I've used before, and I can't remember where I read it first, but somebody was saying that even before, as you were saying, with the introduction of computers and retrieving information, but now especially with AI, the value of knowledge is quickly going to zero because it's so commoditized. Like I don't have to remember very much.
No.
I just need to know how to use a phone to go find it. So the people who, and frankly, this is a lot of us initiating fact finders, initially felt very valuable because we'd get a lot of information and we'd spit it back out at the right time. And people thought, oh, well, you must be smart because you've got facts at your fingertips. One that was useful. Now, anybody can do that. So you don't really get praised for, oh my gosh, who won the NBA championship in 1993? It's like, well, that's, anybody can figure that out in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But the people part is really hard. And I totally agree with you that that's not really going to get replaced. The need, not just the desire, but really the need for that connection. And also, I think understanding people is going to be the hardest thing for AI because people are so complex.
Yeah.
For a long time, I think humans are going to be better at those really soft, fuzzy edges that AI will have more trouble with. But
wouldn't the world be better, though, if the robots all knew our MOs?
Yeah. I mean, yes. So we're developing AI agents so that they can know that and give you it, talk about information, give me information that's way more detailed and give me links to the things so I can go deeper if I want, versus give you stuff in a way that works better for you. Here's the executive summary.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely going to happen. So as education compresses, I guess, like I was saying, I think the burden of getting people prepared for the job is going to shift more and more to the company. In a simpler world, the educational institutes could prepare everyone for a workforce where you're working at a bunch of big employers. But now with so many things you can do in the world, I think the job of schools will be to prepare you to just be like a human in the world that's a functional human, and with a base of education and relationship building. And then companies are going to have to get really good at getting you up to speed in a certain industry and a job. I also think that jobs are changing faster than ever, and change management for some people is harder than it is for other people. And as a population, as a world, I think we need to get better at adapting to change because it's just going to happen so much more quickly. And so again, that goes on the company to say, how do we manage through change, and how do we give people the information that they need, the amount of information that they need based on their fact finder that in the format that best connects to them. Do we send out videos? Do we send out audio messages? Do we do town halls? I just think this next iteration of running a business is going to be so much about people and relationships and your communication styles.
Trainual's really well positioned for that. I mean, I don't know. It is a huge trend, but it's also what you guys have been doing since you started, is building a system so that it's a lot easier for people. I, as a business owner, don't have to create that in my company. I can borrow it from you guys and then tweak it so that it fits my company rather than start from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an exciting time. Like yesterday, I had a meeting with our head of finance, and I was sharing how I think M&A activity is going to pick up in the next few years. More businesses will merge and connect, and it's going to be easier than ever for businesses to converge because you won't necessarily need to integrate your systems or integrate your software. It's just dumping both of your data into a bigger lake. And now the AI can access both of your customer histories. If you're not relying on these big, archaic back-end systems, integrating two companies becomes so much easier. So I think that'll pick up, but it's a fun time to be running a company.
I agree. A little daunting, but that's kind of fun. It's better than just doing the same thing every day for the next 20 years.
Yeah. My consulting business was called Organized Chaos. That's what we did, is come in and organize your chaos. And I would tell people, if there's no chaos in your business, that's a bad thing. Like that means that you don't have opportunity coming at you. It means you don't have new markets you're getting into. We should all feel a little bit of chaos. And so this chaos in the market right now, if everyone listening can internalize that as opportunity, this is the time where you can make some big moves.
I totally agree with you. I do think that you talked about communication. I think that's one of the challenges is, and this is a little bit conative, you're a 9 in quick start, I'm a 7 in quick start. So the change and chaos, we're drawn to it more, we create it more a little bit. And I think there are a lot of people who, on the other end of the conative spectrum in quick start, they naturally stabilize. They keep things on the track that it's going.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the people that need a little patience. You used the word grace before. We need to give them a little more grace because it will take them a little longer to get going in the same direction. And it's scarier. I mean, that's an affective thing to be, scarier, but naturally they aren't oh, great, it's chaotic. Cognitively, they can understand, yeah, Chris, I see, you're right, it's important, but they're still going to push back against it. And we need them. Gets to a little bit of the same concept of the chaos is good because it may be painful, but it pushes you, it makes you grow. The people who push back against that are also really necessary because you can overdo the change in the chaos and just start spinning and doing things crazily, and they can rein that in appropriately. So sure, it's going to change, but let's make sure we aren't just changing because it's cool or we anticipate it. I don't know.
Well, this is another language thing, but one of the things I like to do is I call our best practices our current best practices, which appeals both to the high quick start and the lower quick start, to say the people that want to maintain and keep things on the tracks, they want to make sure it's being done the way it's supposed to be being done, right? But then you also don't want to limit innovation and creativity and make people do things that they're saying, well, why do we even do it this way? Oh, that's the way it's always been done. And so I say current best practice, which invites innovation, but make sure that we're all adhering to whatever the current best practice is.
I love that. I think that might be my takeaway. We might have to end soon because, honestly, like current best practices, I think that works great because it does give that kind of flexibility like, hey, they might and frankly will change, but it's what we should be doing now.
I love it.
That's very cool. Actually, I said we will wrap up. So let's just kind of wrap up. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate your time. I'll just do a little pitch for people who are listening. Trainual is fantastic. It is a great way for businesses to get all those processes in place to get their people trained up. So that's kind of the other part of the attraction is I love what you're doing and the way you're driving it out to people. So I'd really encourage people to check it out. anything you want to just throw in before we wrap it up?
Well, I'll just reciprocate and say that Kolbe's fantastic. I did my first Kolbe when I was a teenager. One of my neighbors, I think I might have told you this before, one of my neighbors was, and I think still is, a big Kolbe supporter or consultant. Yep. And I was walking his dogs when he was on vacation, and he came back and he introduced me to Kolbe. So I've had my Kolbe score for decades now. It is such a great way to understand your intrinsic why you are the way you are. And we do it with all of our new employees at Trainual. It helps us communicate with each other. And so, yeah, I think Kolbe and Trainual are a little bit peanut butter and jelly in nature. And I appreciate you inviting me on here.
Yeah, you had told me that story, and maybe we should have started with that. It is a fun story, and it's one of those small world things. You learned about us in Boston years ago, and now here we are in Phoenix. And we didn't even meet in Phoenix. We met at a conference. I can't even remember where it was, but not in Phoenix.
Yeah, Indiana or someplace. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Chris, as I said, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate your time, and I personally look forward to seeing you again soon and having that beer
at a Suns game. Let's go.
At a Suns game. All right.
Good to see you, David.
Bye, Chris.
Thanks for checking out this episode of Powered by Instinct. This show is brought to you by the Kolbe Corp, a company that helps leaders and organizations thrive using the only instinctive strengths assessment on the market. If you enjoyed this episode, then follow Powered by Instinct wherever you get your favorite podcasts, or join us online at kolbe.com/podcast for all the latest episodes.